This information is for educational purposes only and is not intended for medical advice.
Welcome to Enhancing the Human. I'm Dr. Jenna Gatzis, a renowned expert in the field of human enhancement. I've spent decades of my life exploring all aspects of human health, which has allowed me to take people from extreme injury and disability to peak athletic performance. I use cutting-edge advancements, breakthrough technologies, and scientific insights to push the boundaries of human capabilities. The human body is able to do so much more than you think. Let's start enhancing the human. Hello and welcome to Enhancing the Human podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Jenna Gatzis. Today we have the pleasure of speaking with John Graham. He is a 40-year veteran in the health, fitness, and performance industry. He has such a wide range of information to share and such a variety of different things he's been a part of that just create this ultimate human being. And he's such a good person, and his motivations and his intentions are so true and pure that you can't help but be motivated when you're around him. So I want to introduce you to John Graham. He's one of my good friends and one of my mentors. Such a beautiful human being. Can't wait for you guys to hear this episode. I just want to go into just thank you for being here. And you're an inspiration in our industry, honestly. And you're such a good person. And I feel like your light shines through in everything you do. So I just want to say thank you for being here. John Graham.
I could say the exact same thing about you. I think as like minds.
Yes. And I feel that helps keep us going. You know, anytime I see you, I get so happy, and it's all love, and I can feel it. And it means a lot. I hope you know that.
Well, I'm always inspired by all your different Instagram posts and things like that. And I'm like, she's still as amazing as ever when it comes to her fitness and everything she does. But, your intellect and all the things you share with us and how you help people is just tremendous. And I know you're still out there doing that on a daily basis.
Yes, same. We touch a lot of lives. We're blessed in that way. And I love our profession so much. But even reading about you, I didn't know all this stuff. I knew a lot of what you've done, but man, kudos. They're just the educational organizations. You've really stood behind all of that. And your accomplishments speak to that. So that's amazing.
Well, the one thing I never wanted to happen is I never wanted to not continue to be a voice if I thought I could help people and I thought I could help organizations and associations. So I'm still, I guess, in a position or a place where they still think I can contribute. So I'm still doing that. But if I ever get to the point that I don't feel I can contribute to one organization or one group of people, then I'll just move to a different place and try and contribute somewhere else. So I think, we've shifted gears in our careers as much as we need to, but we also stay true to who we are from the beginning. So
exactly. Exactly.
Where I'm going to continue to go.
And you're so humble too. And I love how good people, we act like we're never doing enough, just everything. Your experience is invaluable, just hearing your stories, what you've experienced, the people and the lives you've touched and how, the adversity that you've come across. I just think it's invaluable, and anyone can benefit from anything that you offer. So I hope you know that.
Well, thank you. As vice versa.
Thank you.
I think it's a mutual admiration society on this call.
I know, definitely. We're both like, you're the greatest. But I want to hear a little bit about how you got into everything. So your initial stories of why did you choose the fitness industry? Why did you choose the organizations you did? And just, how did you get started?
Sure. So I was a Division I football player in college, played at the University of Pittsburgh. And I was actually going to pursue a degree in physical therapy. So I was going your route for the longest time. And about my sophomore, junior year, our strength and conditioning coach was a guy named Buddy Morris, who is still actively a strength and conditioning coach in the NFL with the Arizona Cardinals, said to me, John, I don't think you should just limit your talents to helping people who need rehab. I think you should work on doing something else. And you do so well in the weight room. Why don't you try to look at a career in that direction? Ironically, the University of Pittsburgh was starting their exercise science program. So I, obviously you go home and tell your mom, hey, I'm not going into physical therapy anymore. I'm going to try this exercise science world. The first reaction out of her was, do they pay money in that? And, I said, well, Mom, we're going to find out. Um, and, as I went through college and I met some really great people along the way and really started connecting with the industry. The first organization I connected with was the Medical Fitness Association because I was working for a hospital in Erie, Pennsylvania called Hammett Health Systems. And we were one of the first 6 medically based wellness centers in the country at the time. So we were really in the infancy of the medical fitness industry. And I connected with the MFA and they let me get involved from a leadership standpoint and really supported my growth professionally. So I owe them a lot and a lot of thanks for all they did, John Green and Robin Schutte. And I got really excited about that. And then along came the NSCA.
NSCA.
And I got a call from a go ahead.
Explain a little bit about the MFA, just so people understand what that is, because
Sure.
during that time too, even now, the wellness was not a big thing at all. And so it was not frowned upon, but it wasn't really believed in like it is now. So you were up against a lot of adversity. So explain a little bit about what the Medical Fitness Association was and just how you were involved with them.
Sure. So the Medical Fitness Association was, as I mentioned, was started by John Green and Robin Schutte out of Chicago. And really what they were doing was trying to get hospital systems to get involved in fitness because they felt a hospital would make a stronger commitment to doing it the right way with screening, assessments, making sure that we were working with chronic conditions and disorders and doing all of the detail things that maybe a traditional commercial fitness center wouldn't necessarily do, although I do believe there's several commercial facilities out there that do it the right way also. And then once we got started, we started really looking at other hospital systems around the country and really started pushing it that direction. And a guy named Doug Riley got involved. And I came to Allentown about that point. I'd been at Hammett for about 8 years, but I got hired by a gentleman by the name of Dr. Tom Mead. And Tom Mead actually was a revolutionary physician when it came to really getting engaged in medical fitness. And he wanted to really rewrite the book. And Tom is actually the author of the definition of medical fitness with the MFA. And actually, I was fortunate enough that he let me give some insight into that as well. But Tom really drove the physicians into it. He got credibility for the MFA as the physician president of the association and really started going out and marketing the program to other healthcare systems and developing it.
I love
And
that. Just so people know, when he says the right way, when you're giving a diagnosis to someone and everything is just generalized, the person doesn't truly get what they need. So going in and doing fitness assessments, it can give you an insight into physically helping that person and programming around what their specific needs are so that they can get the most out of all of their care. And when doctors feel comfortable with their team, they'll be more likely to refer. And there's this whole cycle now of doctors and the fitness industry working together. So the person and the patient, the client, they're getting the most out of what they need and the most out of their time. And you see their lives change, just so people know that.
Right. I think, Jenna, the biggest thing that I've been really impressed with people in the medical fitness industry is they screen people appropriately before they start their programs.
Yes.
So, a lot of times you'll get someone as a referral from a physical therapy who maybe they were treating them for an ACL tear or a rotator cuff tear. And that's what you understand coming in orthopedically. But then you also have to look at other things like their cardiovascular system, their pulmonary system. You have to understand their immunological and hematological disorders that they may have had. So I always look at the medical fitness industry as we kind of catch it all and try to figure out how to really help people because as you and I both know nowadays, 40% of the population has 2 or more chronic conditions and disorders. So the numbers have gone dramatically upward over the last 20 years and they're continuing to climb. And so having that kind of resource for people is really important. And one of the other things that we did right from the get-go was a lot of people said, how do you make sure that everybody has the same level of expertise that you do? And the one key thing we did right from the beginning was we started educational programs for our team, but we also put manuals together on if somebody comes in with cystic fibrosis, how do we help them and how do we treat them and how do we work with them? If somebody comes in with type 2 diabetes, what are we doing? So we were really making sure that if you came in on a Saturday at 2 o'clock in the afternoon and we had one of our part-time team members there, they were just as knowledgeable as our full-time director was. And that was important to us because you never know when you'd have an appointment scheduled with someone who really need that kind of supervision.
And that speaks volumes to your character because I want people to know that it is hard to do that and it takes time. I make things look easy when I work with people. They're like, oh, you fix everything. And they act like it's just so simple. It's not simple. It's the hundreds of thousands of hours that you put in, the patient histories, the subjective, the correlating the different things, but looking at the person as a whole. That is the rarest thing because a lot of physicians don't look at the human body as the whole. They look at people as a diagnosis because and I talk about this, I feel every time, but the medical industry has become more of a corporation. So that's why our professions are so special because we have so much control over these variables that can really change someone's life and have an impact on their health drastically.
Right. Well, and I think, you and I would both agree that the most important thing that we do as professionals is we listen. Because I think a lot of times, and we see this a lot with our inexperienced team that haven't had the opportunity to really spend a lot of time doing programming for people, is when someone sits down with them and starts talking with them, they're already writing the program in their brain before they're listening to all the responses that the person is giving. And sometimes they miss some things because they're so busy trying to provide the information back or their answers back that they're not listening to what the person is saying. And so what I always tell everybody in the profession is when someone's talking to you, give them 5 seconds to kind of digest what they just said before you start to jump into something again.
Yes, and that's again another thing that's invaluable because it's hard to modify what you know. Not only do you have to know what you know, it's one of my favorite things. I thrive on things that I'm not good at, so I make sure to dive in where I feel adversity in any way in my life. So I'm like that. I like to modify things based on the person's daily needs. Oh, you had an argument, you don't want to lay on your back because you have anxiety today. Well, what am I going to say? All right, see you later. We'll see you tomorrow. I have to do my job still. So how do we modify things? And I'll make people feel better and I'll do what I need to do just in a different way that they don't know is the way. And so they're like, how did it feels better? How did you do that? I was like, oh, I manipulated you by you thinking I wasn't working on it, but I was working. So it's important to give the person what they need and be able to modify in any way, but that's also a skill in its own. So I love that you preach that because it means so much.
Yeah, I think that's the hardest part is trying to get people to understand that you got to take the time and the energy up front to make sure that you're doing it the correct way for a person, and it'll pay much bigger dividends down the road with that individual if you do listen to them up front.
Yes, and it's not a one size fits all. That's
Correct.
in our society, there's a lot of I want the quick fix, the pill that's going to make me better, and that's not the case. And or people vilify certain modalities or techniques, and it's no, there's never an absolute with any of that. It's time and place. You have many tools in your toolbox because you need to be able to modify to cater to that person.
Yeah, I always love the saying that when someone tells me that won't work, and I just start
I know.
laughing. I
I
say,
know.
"I've seen it work before, so it may work."
I always say not with that attitude.
every, everybody always responds differently to anything that you do for them.
Yes.
But I think sometimes we have to make adjustments in things that we know technically are not what we would normally do. And I never like to say there's a right and wrong. And someone inevitably, as you are well aware, when we go to these Perform Better summits and you and I speak to the audiences, the question we often get from people is this the right program? And I always look at them and go, there's no such thing as the right program. Everybody gets an individual program. So you have to develop the program based on the individual. And whenever they tell me, is it a wrong program? I always say, there's no such thing as a wrong program. You have got to figure out what works best for your client. But here's some key indicators you may want to look for. Here's some things that have a history of being successful. But that doesn't mean that you can always do that. I had an Olympic cyclist several years ago who had a medial meniscus tear in his knee. The last thing in the world you would ever do with an individual like that, more than likely based on science, is knee extension. But his VMO was completely atrophying and he was getting ready for the Olympic Games. And someone said, we got to fix this. And I said, well, I know one thing that'll work the VMO. Let's give it a shot, And it worked. I mean, his VMO came back. He got his strength back. His knee pain stopped. It was all things that are contraindicated to what I would normally do in that scenario, but it worked. And, so sometimes you try things that you would never normally do, and you have to jump outside of your comfort zone, your box, and actually figure it out.
Yes.
Um,
And as
a lot
long
of
as you're
people
not
sometimes are afraid
causing
of that too.
Yeah, they are, but you know yourself well enough and you know the information well enough to where you know you're not going to drastically change them. You're taking it easy, you're watching and monitoring as you're doing it and seeing their response, their hypersensitivity to it. And so you can tell just then. It's not like you're going to be grimacing in pain and crying and you're going to be like, no, keep going. So it's just about being aware of the variables and knowing your skills well enough to feel safe with what you're doing.
Right.
But everyone likes that one answer, and it is being in your comfort zone. But with what we do, we're never in our comfort zone. I thrive in being outside of the comfort zone because that's where everything is. And then you see so much that you can modify anything, and you don't feel overwhelmed when things come at you as far as
Right.
cases.
The one thing I always tell people is it's really important to never give up on what got you there in the first place. And so, even though you may climb a corporate ladder someday or, be in an administrative role like I am today, I haven't stopped programming. I haven't stopped going out and still working with high school teams. I was in a high school weight room yesterday with a football team. And you never give up on what got you here in the first place, because I think the most important way to maintain your expertise and your professionalism is to continue to do that. And athletes have changed a lot in 30 years, but so have people.
Hmm.
With the advent of technology and all the things that are out there, people exercise probably less outside of the gym or outside of supervision from fitness professionals than they ever have before. And what I always tell people is the most important thing we have to do is teach people how to exercise when we're not there. Because, inevitably they get in a car and drive to the front door of a shopping center, or, they don't necessarily look for those opportunities to continue to be active like we did 20 or 30 years ago. So consequently, we become, I think, more important than ever in what we do, because we have to not only help people to exercise when they're in our presence, but more importantly, exercise when they're not in our presence.
And understand the importance of use it or lose it. I don't know if you see this, but my kids are more sedentary than the parents, and they have more sedentary injuries where their motor control and their coordination is ridiculous compared to their parents. So,
Right.
reaction time, their brain is slower to react than their parents brain is. So it speaks volumes to how important it is to move the human body. And I feel like with our society that goes completely against that, it's important for us to remember and preach that. Like you said, just living in the field and working in the field, because then you start to lose yourself if you just stay in the office and you don't see the new changes and the new techniques coming out, and you can't adapt, and you kind of that's why I love my profession. We're learning the rest of our lives. And that's what I signed up for. I knew that going in.
Well, and the best example I can give you is people always ask me, why do we see so many ACL injuries today in sports that we didn't see, 40 years ago when I was playing football and things along that line. I saw 2 ACL injuries in 8 years of football between high school and college, and that was playing on a turf field for 4 years.
Wow.
And everybody else says, why do you think they're more prevalent today than they've ever been before? And I always say, because play went out the door. Kids don't play like they used to. They're not, they don't come home, throw their gym bag or whatever that we used to have back in those days in the house and go run around the neighborhood and jump off the neighbor's roof and
Play in the
jump out of
trees.
tree houses. Although no, I'm not advocating necessarily those things, but they
Live it
don't do
up.
the little things we used to do to teach
Yeah.
to develop ligament and tendon strength
Yes.
in addition to muscle strength. So, one of the things we do with our sports performance programs is we really put a strong emphasis on doing hopping on one foot, because we teach people the basic concepts of running is flying. Every time you touch the ground, your feet and body are back up in the air for 9/10 of the time that it takes you to touch the ground. So when you're running at full speed, you're only really touching the ground 1/10 of the time that you're running whatever distance you're running. So it's really important to teach them how to land so that they land correctly and don't get hurt. And I think we really started that process 30 years ago, because I started out in orthopedics with really focusing on our female athletes to make sure not necessarily they were trained differently, but they were trained the same as their male counterparts in a lot of sports. I was I found out very quickly the primary reason for a lot of the injuries that were occurring in our female athletes had more to do with their training than the fact that they weren't prepared to do things. It was more the fact that nobody trained them correctly to really absorb the stresses of playing that sport.
So then not only do you have to train the skill, you have to train the imbalances that come with that skill. So I see that a lot still in pro athletes. So a lot of my
Oh yeah,
coaches, they
yeah. I
wanna they
mean,
want
you see it at high level athletes.
it's
Imagine what we
crazy.
see with the youth.
Yeah, but still, I
It's
mean, the youth is it's
it's
crazy.
crazy. It's
It
crazy to run
is.
into.
But you would think things would change and you think that the best of the best have the best of the best. And that's not necessarily true because there's a lot of ego in that. And I feel that's why you succeed in a lot of what you do. You know what you don't know. Like you said, if someone asks you and you don't know, you go look. That's how you learn. We don't know anything as human beings. There's a lot of things that we're just like, kind of making up along the way. So the more we learn, the more we can get a grasp on what we do know. And you're just constantly correlating things, which is the greatest.
Well, and I think the other thing is, and I know you have a strong foundation in this as well. Is what I started doing 20 years ago was I stopped using exercise as a form of punishment when people weren't doing the right things in workouts with high school teams and youth teams and programs and things. And I started really educating the coaches about it, to the point now that a lot of my teams that I still have the opportunity to spend time with, they know that the number one thing I always say to them at the end of every workout is, I love exercise. And I make them say that I love exercise. And I say, if I ask you to do 25 push-ups because you wanted to interrupt your weight training workout to go get a drink of water, or you wanted to interrupt your weight training workout to go to the bathroom, and you come back and I say, I want you to do 25 push-ups, I'm only asking you to do that not because I'm punishing you for that, but because I don't want you to lose out on the benefits of the exercise session that you have. And I want to make sure you get every ounce of benefit out of working out that you possibly can. So our kids have gotten the idea now that, hey, Coach Graham doesn't tell us to do this because he's trying to make us punish us. He's doing this because he wants to make us better.
Yes.
And I think that's the important thing that kids have to understand, because that translates into adulthood. I mean,
Yep.
you and I both know we still have adults that we work with on a daily basis that are in
Yep.
their 50s and 60s that
Oh,
think if we ask them to do something, that's what they used to do in gym class for punishment. We're like,
yes.
wait a minute, that's not what we're asking you to
Yep.
do.
And I used to
So,
work in the ICU, the burn and trauma center in the hospitals, and I just remember seeing people lose their limbs, and just thinking, wow, and just even dissection where the carotid, I'm like, wow, we're all so fragile and we don't even realize. So such a blessing. Like I remember when this lady lost her leg and I'm like, I can use the stairs because I have my legs, and from that day forward, I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to be more aware because we take our lives for granted. We take our functions for granted. Our eyes, everything is a blessing. So, and I always tell people, use it or lose it's a real thing. So if you don't value it, it's not going to be there soon.
right, right.
And I
Well,
love
I found that
exercise.
out firsthand in January. I broke my foot and had to miss 8 weeks of running. And it was like,
Aw,
better find something else to do. But the good thing is, it taught me to appreciate people who do have injuries even more,
yep.
and also find the alternatives to how to help them to stay fit and keep their cardiovascular system and their anaerobic and their aerobic energy systems functioning at an optimal level.
And psychologically to support them because when you can't do something that you're used to doing on a regular basis, it takes a toll on your mental health. So I've seen people become depressed. Oh, my doctor told me I'm not allowed to do this anymore. I'm like, no, let's just do it in a safe way where you're not irritating or inflaming things, but you're still progressing and you're still getting that that feeling of accomplishment. And especially my male patients are just like, I can't do that. And you just see their whole soul just like die out. Like, what do you mean? And they're like, is it aging? And then I'm like, no, it's not. You just have a little going on here. You have a little bit of imbalance and we need to fix that, coordinate you, get rid of the inflammation. You'll be fine. And so it's fun
Right.
giving people autonomy in their health. It's amazing. Kids, though, what other things do you see besides the ACL stuff? You said you saw like two over 8 years, but then how many are you seeing now? More?
Oh, much more. Yeah. I mean, in a given season, I mean, our number one goal is to prevent our kids from getting injured. I've been blessed to work with probably the best high school coach in the country in field hockey, in Sue Butz-Daven, who's been coaching 40 years, has the most wins of all time. I've had the privilege of being with her for 30 of those years, and she's won 15 state championships in 30 years. So,
Amazing.
she's kind of boring. She keeps winning state championships,
I
but
love that.
she's also won 3 national championships too. But Sue and her coaching staff, I mean, we'll be starting our summer program up here in the next week or so. They're committed to helping their girls to understand the value of training every single day. So they may train with me 3 days a week when it comes to their weight work, their speed training, and some of their conditioning work. But they're also doing 3 other days a week where they're out in the field doing skills with the field. But they're also doing extra running as well. They're doing conditioning work and things along that line. So they prepare their bodies for 6 days a week. All summer long. And by the time they get to the season, they're physically ready. And it really translates into their season because as they get into the late part of the season, they're really the stronger team on every level when it comes to conditioning, but also fitness and their ability to maintain their skill set throughout the entire game, which a lot of the games have come down to the last minute of a game or the last couple minutes of a game or even overtime situations where they've won championships by winning in overtime. So I think that makes a huge difference for them, but it also makes a huge difference from an injury prevention standpoint. They don't see the same number of injuries that other sport teams do that are like-minded with some of their philosophies as far as their in-season program, but they miss the off-season program. And I think our biggest difference is also we don't stop training in season. A lot of schools and a lot of programs, once the season hits, coaches kind of figure that they're getting enough work out in the field that they don't need to do the work off the field. And Sue does not allow that to happen. She keeps them in the weight room at least twice a week. And really, we work on the conditioning. They wrote a book on her a few years back, and the person who's writing the book followed me around with training the girls. And I trained them for an hour and a half, running, conditioning, and doing some strength work. And the person came over to me afterwards and she said, "So that's it. That's everything you'll do for them today?" And I said, "They're going to practice now." I said, "If you think that's it, that's not it. They got to go to practice now." And she's like, "What?" I said, "Yeah, they go to practice now." And she goes, "How do they do that?" I said, "They're conditioned to do that."
Yes.
And I said, that's the difference. I said, if you're conditioned to do something, you can do it.
And it's like, it's nothing for the body to do. It's not,
Right.
It's not a task because you're conditioned to do that. Everyone's capacity is different and you can train whatever level capacity you would like. So I want people to know that too, because that's also frowned upon. Oh, we don't want to work them too hard. I knew a patient that did 7 Ironmans in 7 months on 7 different continents. So I'm like, or in 7 different countries. So I'm like, he was 65. I couldn't believe it. I can't do 1 Ironman in 1 year, let alone once a month for every 7 months. So I think it's impressive to see what the human body is capable of and knowing. So for people to know, you're not just driving them into the ground. You're strategically going through their assessments, seeing what they need, what they're deficient in, where they're lacking, and then you're catering toward bettering them in a way that's utilizing your tools, but not inflaming them because they're going to get inflamed within their performance.
Right. Well, and I tell people all the time, the ACSM guidelines that are out there, the NSCA guidelines, ACE guidelines, everybody's talking about, at least 5 days a week, 30 to 60 minutes of continuous exercise is the standard that people should, work towards. I always tell people that's not enough. Let's do more, and make sure you work on your recovery. Make sure you do all the right things for recovery too. Which you have done a tremendous job of educating our profession on that. But taking, kids always tell me, "Coach, I need a day off." And I'm like, "What do you mean a day off?" I said, "In season, you're not going to get a day off, guys."
Right.
I said, "There is no days off in season." So, you need to start preparing yourself now to get ready. And that's what we need to do, 6 days a week, all summer long, getting you ready. And hey, we can take Sundays off if that's the day the coach stipulates as the day off. But I always tell people I never take a day off. I always work out every day, and I find something to do every day, workout related, because it makes me feel better, and I feel better when I do it. So
yes.
I don't think we need to, and I know you have the same philosophy and same approach. It doesn't mean we do the same things every day, but we find something active to do every day to keep our bodies going in a very positive direction.
And the body's resilient. And so you become resilient, and then that's your new baseline. People like, sometimes I'll go for a bike ride along the ocean, 20 miles or something. And people are like, I can't believe you did that. I didn't look, that's not a workout to me. That's like my enjoyment of just being outside in the sun and, just feeling the breeze. I don't, but before I used to think, walking a mile was effort when I was younger. So it's important for people to recognize that you can change the capacity of the human body beyond anything you believe, and that becomes your new baseline. And then the things that used to be exercise for you before are no longer exercise because they're not challenging for your system anymore. And so you just become,
Right.
I tell everyone, you become a superhero, a superhuman hero. So what's the most interesting thing you've seen with your kids? I mean, it's got to be hard too, dealing with a lot of different personalities. How do you get your message across?
Well, I'm blessed from the fact that I've been in this community now for 30 years. So, I've kind of built up. Fortunately, I've been very blessed that I've worked with a lot of great coaches, a lot of great kids, and a lot of great teams that have been very successful. So, you kind of build up a reputation for, that kind of success level. And then people start to, believe that, hey, if you're telling them to do something, it's probably the right thing to do, which I always appreciate. Two things that I don't do today that maybe we did 30, 40 years ago, although I don't remember doing a lot of it. I never have to yell, never have to raise my voice to a kid anymore. And I never do it because, to be honest with you, they're smarter than we were. If our coaches told us to run into a concrete wall, we would have done it. Like kids nowadays, when you ask them to run into a concrete wall, will ask you why.
Yes.
Um, I think the most important thing is to identify those kids that nobody thinks has the potential to be successful and make them successful.
Yeah.
Because those are the kids that really
They need
you'll
to be
change their life.
seen. Yeah.
Yeah, you'll change their life. You'll make them better for it, but you also make everybody around them better for it because the
Yes.
rest of the kids will see what he was able to accomplish or she was able to accomplish, and they really migrate to that. Um, we just tested our our one of our football teams for 3 lifts in the weight room, and the number one kid on the team 2 years ago at a summer workout, his first workout with the team, ran one time down the field, stopped at the other end of the field, and went down on his knees and started crying. And the head coach and I ran to him because obviously we were worried something was wrong. And he just said, I can't do this. And we
Oh,
said, what do you
wow.
mean you can't do this? He said, I just don't believe I have the skill set to do it. And I said, if you keep coming and if you keep working every day, you'll make it. And I saw him I saw him all summer, but then I saw him at our first fall camp. And I walked up to him and he had the biggest smile on his face. And I said, Mark, I said, are you happy you're here? And he goes, Coach, I love this. This is so much fun. And we just tested in weights and he had our highest total for anybody on the team in lifting. And he
Wow.
might be one of our starters this year, where 3 years ago, I wasn't even sure if he'd be dressing for games on Friday nights.
I love
So
that.
um, that's,
I love that.
that's the stuff that makes you proud. And
Yes.
um, I ran into a guy last night. We had a big event at Muhammad Ali's training camp for one of our hospital systems. And Larry Holmes who's one of my clients, was with me. And we went to the event, and this person walked over, and I assumed they wanted to talk to Larry like everybody else does. And he said, I want to talk to you. And I said, you want to talk to me? What do you want to talk to me about? And he goes, you may not remember this, but like 10 years ago, I asked you about how to lose weight, and you gave me your cell phone number, and I called you a bunch of times, and you kept giving me programs and you kept motivating me to do this. But he goes, well, I lost the weight. And I
Amazing.
said, I don't even recognize you. That's
I
how much weight he
love that.
lost. And I said, that's what's important,
Yes.
and it's not, as I always tell people, it's not what you're doing when everybody's watching you and when the cameras are on you, or when you're being spotlighted by your organization or somebody like that. It's what you're doing when nobody's watching and you're out, in the middle of a field with a group of high school kids, or you're in your clinic working with your patients and helping them to get better. That's what really defines who we are. It's not all those moments where you get the highlights and the spotlight on you. Um, Really are built by the fact that you do so many wonderful things for people when nobody's watching, and
Yeah.
that's what it's all about. And
I love that. I love that. And then just, I know when people are in that, because I used to be in that, I wasn't always in shape. So when I was younger and when I was going through college, I had back pain and I thought that, maybe I can't do this or can't do that. And I remember because being a girl in college, I thought run and eat tuna and chicken with nothing on it. So I was so uncoordinated and so skinny fat. And I just remember I had the worst back pain, I had the worst knee pain, and I could barely bend over without, struggling to stand back up. So I like to use what I post as a way to showcase you could do anything. That was when I was 20 years old, and now I'm in better shape now than I was back then. And so the human body is capable of doing amazing things. And I think a lot of times, especially with good people or people going through things where they don't have perspectives, they're their own worst enemy. And they have that mindset, I'll never do this or I'll never do that. There's so many times I've said that to myself. So many people that came up to me and they're like, you'll never do this, you'll never do that. And I'm like, all right, great. I love when people tell me I can't do things because watch me. So it's important for people to recognize that you can do anything you put your mind to. You just have to find someone that's trusted, that cares, truly cares about people. So not just trying to get something out of it, you'll get something out of it if you do what's right. And like you said, you have that standard of doing what's right and doing what the person needs, and you'll get everything that you need.
Well, and the one thing I tell people all the time, I mean, you have a lot of very high level athletes. You also have a lot of high level um, personalities in our celebrity world as well that you work with. But and I've been blessed to have some similar opportunities. But I always tell people, none of that means anything to me. At the end of the day, I'm happy that those 40 people that showed up for my metabolic class on a Saturday morning at 8 o'clock came and did that, and that's what it's all about. And I always tell people, I've learned so much from teaching metabolic training that came through COVID because, COVID taught us how to do things outside the box that we didn't think about doing before, and how to make things better for people when we didn't have all the tools that we would normally have at our disposal. And I think it's taught us how to be better at what we do and how to program better
and how to adapt.
right?
My favorite patient right now is my 95-year-old. This little sassy
Yeah.
Jewish lady gives it to me. Won't let me slip with anything, but she knows. She's like, I feel that. I know you know what I'm talking about. But her family thinks she has dementia, but she knows I see her. So the way, like, she'll make jokes with me. She feels so good standing on her own, and she'll like do this to me. And I'm like, are we gonna fight? I'm like, let's go. And then she's like, do you want an ice cream cone? I'm like, yes, I do want an ice cream cone. Like, but it's
you have one?
Yeah, every time. She's like, get her to her seeing it, get her an ice cream cone. Like, it's just these little baby ones from Trader Joe's are so good. But it's things like that that just feed my soul, because she's looking for help. And the doctors out here are like, you need this surgery, that surgery, neck surgery. She's like, my neck doesn't hurt. So she got the neck surgery. Her back had hurt. And so now they're like, you're not a candidate for back surgery. She's like, I don't understand. Because people are just about, okay, what will the money bring? So not doing what's best for her. But for me, the reason why I came out here with all the celebrities, because I saw the disconnect between, what people are pushing and what the fads are, and what the media's, glamorizing, and what's true. So, people will buy anything because they have hope and they want to be able to thrive in life, but they're being misguided. So I came out here and I wanted to make our industry sexy, So people are just people. These people just memorize lines. Like, unless you have character and you care about other people, some of these people that I know, they treat people like shit. And I can change people's lives, and I can change their kids' lives, and they could look at me down the hall and never talk to me again. Like, so, when someone's not connected to themselves and they don't have that love for themselves, they can't have love for other people. So a lot of these celebrities are doing things for the show, but they lose their soul in the meantime. And that's not what we're about and what our profession needs to be able to be successful. So I think it's important for people to recognize, like, celebrities are just celebrities. They're just, memorizing lines from movies. And you can do a lot with technology where you make people look very talented, and not taking away from anything anyone's done. It's just, I feel like we put people up on a pedestal when people's hearts, like your heart, are so much more valuable and should be idolized and put up on a pedestal more than anything else. Because that's what's important in life, is how you treat people, how you show up every day, because you're going to change the world. Each person is like a domino effect. They're going to go change someone else's life because of the chance that you gave them. So I hope people recognize that it doesn't matter. Celebrities don't mean anything. But I used to say I'm going to come out and infiltrate the idiots so that I can, all my pages are going to be like, fuck you. But it's important for people to recognize, there's a lot of good celebrities, just like there's a lot of good everything in every profession. But you need to recognize that it's just glamour and glitz in Hollywood. So how you treat
Right.
people on a regular basis, individual basis, is so much more valuable than any of that.
I've had the privilege of being around people like David Akers and Steve Carlton and Larry Holmes, and I was with Larry last night. And the thing that always amazes me about those people, because they're such good people, a good example is we ate at a restaurant last night, and as we were leaving, all the hospitality staff and the cooks and everybody came out, and Larry took pictures for 25 minutes,
Ah,
and he was tired. It was 9:30 at night. He had had a long day. The last thing he probably wanted to be doing was standing there and taking pictures for 25 minutes with, people. But you know what? He recognizes, because he came from those roots himself, he recognizes, the blue collar world, the people in the world that may not have what he has financially or, success wise or celebrity status wise, but he treats them like they are just as important as anybody he's ever met in his lifetime. And I think every person who engages with him feels good about it. And I've seen David Akers and Steve Carlton do the exact same things by going to meet with veterans when they're in town and going to hospitals and doing the little things that are so important. And I think that's really, what we have to focus on in this profession is, as you said earlier on in this conversation, we have to respect that God gave us the health and well-being to do what we do and to spread that good word. And every day, we get to help people to feel better about themselves, not only physically, but emotionally and mentally as well. And we have to continue to, make sure that people who follow us in this industry don't forget that message.
right.
Because as you said, somebody loses their limb, and we got two very good limbs that still work really well, and we can climb rocks and do crazy stuff that we can do that most people can't. We have to respect what we have, and because it can go away tomorrow, we could lose it tomorrow too.
Yes.
And I think that's important that we always try to spread that good word to everybody in the profession too. I always tell people that the most important person in your gym isn't the person who's in great shape, who shows up there every day to work out. It's the person who's off in the corner somewhere, feels uncomfortable about themselves, that's maybe 20 or 30 or 50 pounds overweight, that's looking at their chart and can't figure out what they're supposed to do. That's the person you need to help the most, because that's the
Showing up.
person that will always respond the best.
Mhm.
And I make a point of every day walking around to the people who aren't in the best shape and asking them how they're doing, because I know how the people that are in great shape are doing because I can see it.
Right.
It's the people that aren't that you really have to go out of your way to help and support, because they'll ultimately become the best ambassadors for your program. And it's how our fitness centers have been so successful at maintaining our membership base. And our centers have won the best centers in the Valley for 8 straight years now. And I think we win that because of our compassion for people and our personality for people.
And so explain to people a little bit about your programs, and they encompass just the everyday goer, but also kids that want to go into different sports and thrive in different skills. So explain a little bit about that, just in case people want to reach out and be able to work with you.
Sure. I think you and I have been through enough seminars over the years, but and I love him dearly, and he's a great man. And he's so well educated, and he gives us so much in the industry. But I remember sitting in a Thomas Plummer summit
Oh
one
gosh.
year, and Thomas said that we should really focus on specializing and really focus on just finding our niche. And I looked at him and I shook my head and I go, no, that's not what we should do. What we should do is learn how to be good at everything. And we should learn how to help people from all different walks of life. So our population ranges from as young as 7 to, we have clients in their 90s in our facilities.
Amazing.
We range from handling chronic conditions and disorders to working with pro athletes. We work with the general fitness population. We work with marathon runners. We work with triathletes, and we work with half marathon runners, and all kinds of different running programs. But we work with golfers, tennis players. The new fad, as everybody knows, is pickleball. We work with
Pickleball.
the pickleball group.
They love
Um,
pickleball.
So, we handle all different aspects of people's health and well-being. But what that's allowed us to do is to fill our fitness centers up from morning until night because we attract all different populations. We don't focus on one small segment of the population. We focus on the entire population. And the other benefit of doing that is you draw in the grandparents, the parents, and the kids. So you get three generations of people, and
Yep.
I'm on my at least my second generation of training kids of parents who I trained.
I love it.
If I get to that third generation, we may have to start thinking about retirement age. But um, I think that, the key thing that we have to really focus our attention on is how do we help everybody and how do we support everybody? Um, my boss always calls me the Swiss Army knife because he said, "Hey, I can have you do five different things in a day in five different arenas and you know what to do." And I said, well, it's because that's what we teach ourselves to be able to
Yes.
do. So it's really important that, if you're getting into this profession, you don't take that niche approach to what you do. I always tell, we always have, graduates out of colleges that come in and they want to be sports performance coaches and they want to know how I did it and how they can train elite athletes and how they can go on and become a Division I college coach. And I said, do you understand how many positions there are out there for that? I said, there's a very small number of positions, but there's a lot of positions in the fitness industry. And you can still reach that audience, but you also want to reach the other audiences because that's how you'll build your career and how you'll build your success and also your
Definitely.
income level, is being able to help everyone.
And your
So I
awareness of
think
the
that
human body, like you said, I think, it's good in the technology world if you just study technology in this in this arena. But with what we do, the human body is the human body. So every variable that impacts homeostasis is going to impact our person's performance or recovery. So, because, people come at me when I hold people to a higher standard in the profession or in, just orthopedics, when I'm like, they don't know about that. How do they not know about that? And they're like, oh, well, not everyone studies as much as you do. And I'm like, well, then they shouldn't have joined this profession because that's what this is about. You
right.
have to constantly be keeping up to date and learning. And that's, I love that when you're looking at different arenas and you're like, okay, what is this? How do I adapt? What else can I use? Because that's how you're going to be able to program for any person in the world because it doesn't matter. You know all aspects of the human body. So you can just modify and cater to what that person needs.
Well, people always, will call people like you and I workaholics in this profession because of the hours we put into our jobs, or what they like to call jobs.
Yeah, I
Um,
know. I was going to say.
I always tell people, I don't think I've ever worked a day in my life. And I said, why did you go into the fitness industry in the first place? And they said, because I like to exercise. And I said, well, if you like to exercise, why wouldn't you like doing it with other people every day and spending time with people every day? I mean, that's the ultimate. And as I always say, if you're spending hours at work, that you would be spending hours in front of a television set. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but if you're actually out doing exercise and activity and helping people versus sitting in front of a television set, you know, I think that's a better choice.
It
And
is.
it's also more productive. It's more beneficial. And at the end of the day, when you go home at the end of the day and you had someone tell you how much they appreciate your time and effort and energy into making them feel better, I mean, that's a good way to
The
go to
best.
sleep every night and
Literally.
and feel better about yourself.
And you stay on top of what you're doing for as long as you can, and you build these relationships. Some of the stuff, like you said, you can do something with someone, you not even remember it, but you see how they were impacted by what you said. And, when you show up with that character and that integrity on a regular basis, that's all you present to people. So it's the best way to live. I love it. I really, really do. So I appreciate your perspective so much. So I have two questions that I ask everyone, and I want to hear your thoughts. So if you could give yourself one piece of advice, the younger you, one piece of advice, what would it be?
Um, I think the most important thing I could tell myself was don't let other people deter you from what your goals and objectives are in this industry. Believe in yourself, believe in what you're doing. Um, I have my mom always kids around with me, and she actually has told my recent girlfriend, things that she goes, he overcame so much all the time. He just never like gave up when people told him he should quit, whether it was sports or his career or whatever he was doing. And I always say to people, like, you get one shot at this. So don't ever let things stop you from accomplishing what you're capable of. And don't believe that there's an end point. I think, one of the reasons I went out of physical therapy, and fortunately, there's people like you out there that are redefining physical therapy every day. But one of the things one of the reasons why I didn't want to be a physical therapist, and made the transition, was I didn't want protocols to dictate what I could or couldn't do.
Or
And insurance
insurance.
companies,
Yeah.
insurance companies will dictate that to you.
Hmm.
And I wanted to be able to say, okay, well, if that's not working, we're going to do something else,
Right.
and I'm not going to keep doing the same thing. And I've worked with our orthopedic docs, and they have these protocols they want their rehab people to follow. And I said, it's a different story if you're rehabbing me versus rehabbing somebody who's the same age as me but hasn't exercised for the past 30 years. We're
Yes.
different animals, and
But they
so
don't
you have
know
to
those
treat us
changes.
differently.
Right.
Yeah. So that would be the number one thing I would say is don't do that. And then I'd say the number two thing is, um, and I think you embody this as well, is don't let your successes go to your head. Because people recognize you for being a person who cares and does the right things for people, and makes people better. And you get those recognitions because you did the right thing and you showed character integrity and you were honest through the process. But most importantly, you were humble through the process. I think the biggest mistake, you and I would both agree on this, that people who are really successful in our profession sometimes, is they forget where they come from, and they forget that sometimes volunteerism and doing the little things in life, um, can make a
It's
difference.
true. I hope people know that. And just know that I've had mentors tell me, oh, you'll never do that. Oh, honey. Oh, you'll never, and I'm like, okay. And I remember in that moment, I'm like, wow, they're, so much more experienced than I am. Maybe they're right. And now I look back and I'm like, good thing I didn't listen to them. So it's important for people to recognize that, because in the moments when it's like some of the hardest times of your life, your lives, and there's a fork in the road, you can take the easy route, or you can go. I love the path of least resistance, or most resistance. I love the path of most resistance, because looking back on all the things you thought were adversity or failure or anything, I would not change a thing. You learn so much through those, each individual case, that I wouldn't be who I am if it wasn't for all of the things I've been through. So it's important to recognize
Right.
that. I love that. Ah, amazing. And then let's see, the number one behavior change you think will lead to the biggest change in someone's life.
Um, Number one behavior change that I think would lead. I think it's time management. I think that they have to figure out how to manage their time to the point that they can make time for health related behaviors in their lives. Because when you're getting someone to start exercising and doing the things that they need to do, they need to learn to commit that time every day to something outside of looking at a cell phone, or looking at a computer, or things along that line. So I think it's all about time management. I'm sure you've done this, and I do it. I still do it. If I'm on a trip at 5 o'clock in the morning, I'm probably in the gym at 2 o'clock getting my workout in before I leave for my trip. So, it's a matter of figuring out, how am I going to make the time to be able to do the things that I want to do, and how am I going to structure my day to be able to do those things that really mean a lot to me to maintain my health and well-being. And as you know, I tell people every day, if you're working out like we do for, hour to 2 to 3 hours a day, we still have another 23 hours that our body's thanking us for having done that.
Yes.
So it's really important that you make the time to take care of you, take care of your body, take care of your health. But I always tell people the biggest benefit I get out of training and working out some days is the mental health component of it. It really helps me to manage my concerns for people, and family and friends, and the clients I deal with, and the work structure. We work in professions where there can be some egos at times, and sometimes we're on the negative end of someone's ego, and we
Hmm.
have to figure out a way to not let that impact us in our day. And I think exercise is probably the perfect way to be able to impact ourselves and say, no matter what somebody said or somebody did 5 minutes ago, um, I know that workout will make me feel better.
Yep. And you can bring yourself back down. So I'll start, holding my breath, and then I go for a walk or I go for a hike, and I feel so much better, and I can take deep breaths, and I feel my rib cage able to expand again. stop clenching my jaw. And I'm like, okay, I'm back. Because you're right. You can't control every single situation in your life. So it's important to recognize. And when you do look at your time and where it's spent, it's important because people have excuses everywhere. And they'll be like, I can't do that. I can't do that. So looking at the time that you spend in your day and being like, wow, I spent 2 hours doing that, or that's a waste of time there. You can get a good workout in 30 to 65 minutes. You don't have to do anything crazy. Just take little steps and you can overcome anything and you can start prioritizing what's really important in your life.
Right. Well,
Love that.
I think that, um, a person who hasn't been a regular exerciser for any period of their life really just needs that positive reinforcement and that encouragement to get started. I was watching a funny video by a comedian, heavyset guy, really funny guy, and he was talking about how he's hired and fired many trainers over his lifetime. And he said, some of his trainers have either quit the industry or maybe, started taking drugs or drinking alcohol after they
That's
worked with
amazing.
him. And it was just a really funny sitcom. But he said, people always said to him, that if you commit to exercise for any period of time, it'll become an addiction to you. He's and his comment was, "It's I wasn't addicted to it at all. I could quit it at any moment." Um, so my point to someone is, you don't try to tell them how you exercise or what motivates you to exercise,
Right.
but you have to help them find those things that are important to them to make them feel better about exercising and things along that line. You also have to find things that motivate them to want to come.
Yes.
We started metabolic training back when COVID hit, and I fortunately, Human Kinetics called me and said, "You want to write a book on this?" And I said, "Sure." So we actually wrote a book on the whole subject.
Love it.
But um, the biggest thing I find with metabolic training is everybody says, "Oh, it's such a great workout. It gets me in so much better shape. I've made such improvements in it." I always tell people the biggest benefit of metabolic training is you show up because there's 30 other people that are going to show up with you and you have fun doing it. And the other thing about metabolic training is because it's a lot of exercise with very short rest periods between, guess what's not happening? You're not looking at your cell phone and you're not
Right.
worried about what you got to do later on that day or worried about checking on something or standing around talking to somebody because you don't have the time with that kind of a
Right.
workout. It's a go workout. And we have people that come from very low levels of fitness to very elite levels of fitness in the same class. We just have different weights available for them at each station. We have different equipment available at each station. So regardless of who's at that station, there's something there for them. And if the advanced person is doing 50 seconds, they can be doing 30 seconds and recovering for 30, where the advanced person may only recover for 10 seconds. So it gives everybody a chance to participate together. And those people that are deconditioned, it makes them feel great about being able to work out with someone who is really well conditioned. But it also works the other way. The person who's very well conditioned will feel good about the fact that they're helping to motivate those people that may don't have the level of fitness they do. So it makes them feel like they're almost an instructor,
Yes.
and I always tell people always walk out of class and they always go, "Man, it was so great to work out next to Joni or Jim, today." And I said, "Yeah," I said, "And you really helped them. They really motivated them to want to do this." And they said, "Yeah, it makes me feel good to know I was once at that level and now I can help other people to get to where I've worked hard to get to."
That's how
So
I feel too. And I want people to
I
know that
think we're
we're
on the
two in the
right
same.
path to
Yeah.
maybe continuing to grow people here. Hopefully,
Yes, I think
yeah.
so. I think so. And the
So
amount of people we've already helped has been absolutely amazing. But for people to know too, I'd never liked exercise. Back when I was younger, I overwhelmed it in my head too. And I acted like I couldn't do this, I couldn't do that. And then once I started really exercising and learning about it and going to grad school, I'm like, wow, I can do this. What if I can do that? So I started running marathons. I did bodybuilding competitions. I did jujitsu, boxing. So the human body is capable of so much. And I would dread going to my workouts and I would pace and be like, oh, I don't want to do this, but I would still do it. And now my capacity, I won't work out for, a week and I'll be able to lift more weight than some of my guys. And they get so mad. And I'm like, it's too heavy for you. I'm like, we need to go down. They're like, are you calling me a bitch? And I'm like, no, I'm not going to let you do it wrong or incorrectly just because you want to compete with me. So you get to the point where you learn to love it and you learn to accept that your body can do so much more and you just feel good. And now I would never go back. My body, even if I stopped for a month, I would never go back because I've built now a different capacity and my body is completely different for the rest of my life. So it's just on and up from here. I
Well,
love
you're
it.
certainly the epitome of that. Well, you motivate many of us that are your colleagues out there.
I love it. Well, John, I thank you so much. I appreciate you. I can't wait to see you. And John, give a little bit of, if you want people to contact you or if people want to contact you, where they can find you, where your facility is located. If you have any social media links that you wanna share with us, you can do that too.
Okay, sure. So obviously the easiest way to reach me is john.graham@sluhn.org. So my name with a period between the John and the Graham, and then at sluhn.org. Um, uh, uh, I always tell people, hey, I have a cell phone number. Call me anytime. I'm not uncomfortable giving out my cell phone. People can call me.
Love it.
It's 610-392-7806. If anybody wants to reach out and talk to me, I'm happy to talk to you and give you any advice that I can to help you grow in the industry. And then in addition to that, our facilities, St. Luke's University Health Network, we're located in Pennsylvania and New Jersey. We have 5 fitness centers, but we also do a lot of community outreach at various sites around the community. We're part of a 20,000 employee healthcare system. So we're a very big healthcare system that does a lot of good things. And I'm always proud of the fact that I work for St. Luke's because our CEO, Mr. Rick Anderson, has really made a commitment in his 35 years here at this hospital. He's the longest tenured CEO in the country. Of making sure that people recognize that it's culture and it's about caring for people first and foremost.
I love
And
that.
dollars and cents at the end of the day are not the priority at St. Luke's. It's completely the opposite. But the dollars and cents will usually find you if you do it the right
Yes,
way.
exactly. I always say that. You don't have to cheat people. Money will
We're one of
come.
the best hospital systems out there, probably one of the
Love
most
that.
successful financially because of that attitude.
I love that.
So I think it's why we're as good as we are is because we have that culture. So and I give him credit for that and all the senior leaders in our organization who continue to stress that culture every single day to our entire organization.
Amazing. Well, we need more people like you in this world. I hope you know that.
I'd say the same about you.
I love it.
Always great to see you. And always
You
great
too.
to talk with you. And
You too.
look forward to seeing you in Chicago.
Definitely. Amazing. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode as much as I did. John is such an amazing human being. His passion shines through everything that he does. And he's worked in this industry for over 40 years. So his information and his knowledge is invaluable. So I hope you guys appreciate it as much as I did. If you enjoyed this episode, go ahead and like and subscribe. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. If you want to look up John in Pennsylvania, St. Luke's University or St. Luke's Hospital, just know that it's great human beings doing good things over there. So I love referring people to people that actually care about other human beings. So again, we hope you guys enjoyed this episode and we'll see you next time.